tower were you pinging off of when you did that message?
Yeah, and a lot of the pictures, especially, they have metadata in the pictures, so it tells you all kind of stuff about where you were and kind of device you were
latitude.
using. I know. Drop a bomb right on you with that picture.
You're listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, where HIPAA and humor collide to make learning fun. Your delightful hosts are Donna Grindle and David Sims. Relax. HIPAA help is on the way.
Welcome to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast. My name is David Sims of HIPAA for MSPs, and joining me is Donna Grindle, Card and Compliance. Good morning, Donna.
Good morning, David.
I know you've missed me this week.
Yeah. Oh, I know it goes both ways because we both had crazy weeks.
Yeah. So typically I get to aggravate you a couple times during the week, kind of get my feel. Couldn't do it this week. So,
we're in for a treat today then.
Yeah. Well, for those of you who've ever used like Google Docs, Donna and I are like collaborating on a document this morning for the show notes. And so she's typing, and as she's typing, I'm just like clicking around in the document all over where she's at.
Driving me insane.
And so anyway, I can't help it.
Yeah, I know.
It's like I said, I have persistent aggravation disorder.
Yeah, and it is persistent. I'll tell you that. So good.
But before we dive into the topic today, which, by the way, is about text messaging, so everybody should be listening to that because I know you texting stuff you shouldn't. But before we dive into that, I do want to let everybody know, number one, we have an app. So if you haven't downloaded our app yet, it's in the Google Play Store and the App Store. Go check that out. So really quick and easy ways to get all of our new episodes. Also, lots of you asked about being able to support the show. So now if you go to helpmewithhipaa.com/give, you can actually support the show. Keep the lights on. So go there and check that out. And as always, we're looking for some new reviews. So Donna and I were talking about this morning about how the Android folks like me can review because, we can't get on iTunes unless we create an account for that. But you can go over and review us on our Facebook page. So that might be the thing to do. But just go tell us how we're doing, how you like the show. Give us some feedback. You can always email us as well if you got questions and all that. And we'll address those if they're proper. So anyway, before we go into that, though, I know I said before already, but got the little thing we got to address because I was, going through looking at my HIPAA news this week. Well, before that, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. I told you, man, we ain't had time yet. We hadn't had time. Where are you going to be next, Donna? Before I go off on my tangent here.
Oh, you are a piece of work. I'm telling you.
I know you just sit back over there going, what in the world is he doing?
I'm just waiting for normal stuff. And so anyhow, I think the day this comes out, I'm at Callaway Gardens and speaking like right now. I will be speaking. And then the Monday after that is Sandy Springs with Cyber Hygiene. And then right now, we've locked in our first one for 2018, which is February 15th, 16th, one of those days. The Georgia, South Carolina Association for Ambulatory Surgical Centers. So I'll be talking with them. So, yay! More fun.
All right.
Hopefully we can get some of these others locked down, so that'll be good. Anyhow. Great fun. And now you may proceed.
Okay, thank you. Gosh, took forever. So as I'm going through reading all the HIPAA news as I do every single day, I ran across an article that I had to fuss about. So, of course I sent it to Donna and I'm like fussing with her about it. But there's an article and a news piece on it. So I did a video in the whole 9 yards where a doctor's complaining that HIPAA is preventing them from alerting the families of addicts who overdose on opioids. And he goes into this whole rant about the doctor should be able to contact family and friends to tell them about this patient, and because it would be better for his care, even though he's not unconscious, he's not anything else. He said he doesn't want anybody to know, but the doctor says he should be able to let people know anyway. And that, number one, the patient's stopping him from doing that, but it's because of HIPAA.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, really? That is not the case.
Well, you're allowed to use professional judgment, and there's all these other things, which is exactly why OCR came out with guidance on how HIPAA allows doctors to respond to the opioid crisis. Conveniently, that came out, I think, like the day before this article was published, or right around the same time before it. So apparently the doctor hadn't read it. But it does a really good job trying to explain, and we did touch on this when we did an episode on HIPAA during a crisis at the Pulse nightclub tragedy, which was just a similar case where they were like, we can't tell you whether or not your loved ones are here because of HIPAA. And that's, the world is different when there's a crisis.
Yeah. And to be clear, this is guidance. This is not like HIPAA changed for the opioid crisis. This is just saying, hey, dude.
This is how HIPAA applies.
Yeah, let us
here.
Tell you again how to use this thing.
Right, and there were two very specific ones that we want to make sure. There's several different questions that they deal with and make sure that you understand, we'll say, that there's clear guidance as to exactly what you're supposed to do. And so I picked two for here that really apply to what you were talking about. Informing persons in a position to prevent or lessen a serious and imminent threat to a patient's health or safety. So it says, for example, a doctor whose patient has overdosed on opioids is presumed to have complied with HIPAA if the doctor informs the family, friends, or caregivers of the opioid abuse after determining, based on facts and circumstances, it's a fact-specific determination, that the patient poses a serious and imminent threat to his or her health through continued opioid abuse upon discharge. So they're making it clear. This is, you're allowed to use professional judgment if you believe that they are going to continue to abuse this drug and they're telling you that they've done it. You can try to talk to the family, friends, or caregivers. And what drug addict is going to say, go ahead, tell everybody I know I'm addicted to drugs.
Most people put it on Facebook anyway, don't they?
It's some crazy.
I'm in rehab again.
Well, the ones that do rehab, they're past that. But if it's not a known thing, and it also makes another point very clear, HIPAA respects individual autonomy by placing certain limitations on sharing health information with family members, friends, and others without the patient's agreement. So in the case that the doctor was talking about, it depends on how the patient really, what state they were in treatment. And it says for patients with decision-making capacity, a healthcare provider must give a patient the opportunity to agree or object to sharing health information with family, friends, and others involved in the individual's care or payment care. Yes, that's and at that point, apparently, it's when the doctor stopped reading it.
Yep.
Because after that, it says the provider is not permitted to share health information about patients who currently have the capacity to make their own healthcare decisions and object to sharing the information generally or with respect to specific people. And then here's the important part. Unless there is a serious and imminent threat of harm to health as described above.
Right.
So just like we're talking about, it's, use some professional judgment that says, you know what? They have decision-making capacity in that they are conscious. But their drug addiction is so serious, and they are in there's so many of them that overdose, and this opioid crisis is insane. And there's states that are suing the drug companies for not making it clear how addictive these things are and getting the doctors to prescribe them. And I mean, it's one thing after another in this crisis, but the bottom line is people are dying constantly. I mean, at a rate that is unprecedented for this kind of a drug addiction. And it is very scary. And believe it or not, almost every person at this point probably knows someone that is affected by this, whether it's something that's spoken about in public or not. You probably know someone affected by the opioid crisis. I know I do. And it's terrifying, and there's things we need to do about it. And as healthcare workers are understanding these kind of things, they can work with the patients, but they still do have that ability when you see them coming in. And you know they're going to be the ones that end up on social media, like there was one where a young mother, they took a picture of her. She had she had shot up, sitting in her car in a parking lot with her child in the back seat in his little rocket seat. And the picture is the doors open and she's laying slumped over in the seat, kind of passed out and still holding the needle in her left hand with the baby in the back seat. And that's not the only one like that I've seen. This is a very horrible problem, and it's an addiction. It is not one of those things where you're predisposed to addictive personality. There's people that would be addicted to nothing, and then they get on these pills for one, and it always starts with, I hurt my back, I had surgery, I had this, I had that, and then they end up addicted to these pills that turns into heroin. It's very terrifying, but if you see people as a healthcare provider, you can make that decision to say they pose a serious and imminent threat of harm to health for themselves and, even potentially children. So you are allowed to do these things. And it goes the same to domestic abuse. There's cases for adult protective services need to be called in. There, sexual abuse, certainly. And it's across the board. You're allowed to do these things if you need to.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, all that's very serious, and you were right to go off on that one.
Yeah. Well,
congratulations.
I actually, on a lot of these article pages at the bottom, you can comment on the news story. And I commented on the news story and gave them the guidance, the link to the guidance, and told them how, great that there's a story out there about this. However, there's some misinformation here. And they promptly removed my comment.
Oh, because it wasn't fake news.
I was like, I know. So I was like, wow. So I guess they don't really want to know the truth. They just want to know what goes along with their story.
Yeah. An expert talking about it. No, we don't need to talk to those people. We just need to.
We don't need experts.
If you're not going to go along with this, then we don't need you. So, but, this doesn't mean on the flip side that this can run amok. And you can deem anything a crisis. For example, I know of a case. Let's just say I know about it, and we'll leave it at that. And it's a nurse that overstepped in a situation kind of along the same lines that, it's okay, I needed to do it. No, it is not. And in that case, there was a child that came in that had a problem, and it turned out to be the quote I will use is a contagious, intensely itchy skin condition caused by a tiny burrowing mite. And if you're in healthcare, you know what that is. If you're not, look it up. But it is a problem. Is it a crisis? Not really. I mean, they're going to itch a lot. And yes, it's contagious, but we're not talking about anything life-threatening, imminent threat to overall health. But this nurse says, well, you know what? I'm in a small town, and here's where things go awry, right? Mm-hmm. Growing up in a small town, one of the reasons I moved, everybody knows everybody. And that 6 degrees to separation is maybe, 6 minutes of separation. But the nurse knew a good friend of the family. They were trying to get the child's mother, couldn't get the child's mother. That's a whole nother story. But when they can't get the child's mother, this nurse says, hey, I know a good friend that knows the child. And so she sends a text message to the friend of the family, discloses the diagnosis, says, if you're with this child, it's contagious. So let me call in a script for you. And then the friend says, oh, well, my boyfriend needs a script. So the nurse is taking, before you know it, the nurse is like treating the whole community via text message that everybody that this person knows. And yes, trying to do the right thing, understand that. And it did require several conversations with a lot of people and some, clearly everybody knew things had been exposed.
Yeah.
And that there was a release of information and that it was inappropriate. But the bottom line is they were trying to do the right thing. Understand.
Mm-hmm.
But this is the ultimate issue here because there's several problems. There's clearly no imminent danger, just maybe some itchy danger. A disclosure in that case was not a crisis. The disclosure was not necessary. But secondly, and this is a perfect segue to the topic for today, it was done via text messaging.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. So text messaging is not secure by default. Period.
Say that again. Just go ahead.
Text messaging is not secure by default.
So when the doctor says, but we've been doing this for years and there's not a problem.
Just because it works doesn't mean it's okay.
Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yeah, it's not a problem. Is that what you would say if you got pulled over going 80 on the highway? Well, I've been doing that for years. It's never been a problem with anybody else.
You're the only one that gave me a ticket for this.
I know. You're the only one that cared. Of course, you're the only one that caught me, but you're the only one that cared.
Yeah. Everything's okay until somebody gets hurt.
Yeah. Put your eye out. But the part is, we know this is going on. It's a rampant problem.
It's a crisis.
This is a crisis, yeah. I can't say that it's rare that I do a training session, a meeting, a group talk, a presentation, whatever, that somebody doesn't come up to me afterwards or during the conversation and ask about text messaging for doctors, clinical staffs, patients, all of that stuff. We know it's being done on a daily basis. And I was in a meeting where clinical staff, it was like all the different departments are there because I'm there to talk about HIPAA and it's, how are we going to implement some stuff? And they talk about, so we text messaging, let's talk about it. And the clinical staff's like, well, we have to do that because, we're at different locations and we need to check on such and such and such and such. And, I might be at this office one day and they might be at another. So I need to be able to text other nurses and doctors. And the IT guy goes, well, it's not secure, so you can't do it. And they're like, well, what are we going to do? He's like, we can't do that. And I'm like, first of all, IT people have to understand it's going to happen. Just saying no doesn't work. Interestingly enough, we talk about an opioid crisis and just say no doesn't work with text messaging. But it does not change anything because that's the root way people feel like they communicate now. I don't know about you, but now people text message while they're sitting right there on the couch together. The kids do it a lot.
I got a picture that, believe it or not, it was three girls from the same family. They don't see each other but once a year. They're at this event. I don't remember if it was Christmas or family reunion. They hadn't seen each other in a year, and they're all sitting on the couch text messaging each other.
It's like,
what?
In their minds, they're having a private conversation.
Yep. That
they can laugh and everybody knows what's going on, but nobody else except for the people on their text messaging.
Right.
The downside to that private conversation is it's clearly documented.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
And people just don't understand. They don't understand.
Yeah, because see, a lot of things that people don't understand about text messaging is if you, let's just say, for instance, I use Verizon. If I send that text message, or if I send that picture, it ends up on Verizon servers. Even if I delete it, it's still on Verizon servers. So somebody somewhere has access to that information, data, pictures,
Yeah,
whatever.
don't you ever watch those true crime things where it shows they have the pages and pages of text messages that they subpoenaed from the wireless providers?
Mm-hmm.
Every detail. And they show the discussions and not only that, where were you when you did it?
Yep.
They can pinpoint within just, a certain number of feet where you were when that happened. What tower were you pinging off of when you did that message?
Yeah, and a lot of the pictures, especially, they have metadata in the pictures, so it tells you all kind of stuff about where you were and kind of device you were
latitude.
using. I know. You drop a bomb right on you with that picture.
Yeah, hit the camel in the tent. Whatever that is, I don't know. But first, let's just be clear. Why is it not secure? Well, first of all, you've got the transmission protocol may or may not be secure. You don't know where it's stored. Just like David said, it's stored on servers. It doesn't matter what you use. Mm-hmm. It's getting stored on a server somewhere. It can be easily accessed by others because I can't tell you the number of times you hear about arguments between family members, friends, significant others, whatever. I saw their text message. It starts with, and then I saw the message they sent. And, or people screw up and go, how many times have you gotten the message that says something bizarre? And then you're like, what? And, oh, wrong person.
Yeah. Or your kid's playing with your phone and.
Oh, yeah. And accidentally sends it to everybody else.
Yeah. Or sends it or sees it. Or forwards something you don't want
forwards
them to
forward. Yeah. Yeah. So, but you do need to know, there's text messaging, there's SMS messaging, which is really what most people do now. They don't understand. We all knew it as text messaging where you had to do it on the flip phone.
Mm-hmm.
It was like how many clicks of the T and, all those 2 clicks, 3 clicks, 4 clicks.
People are like, what are you talking about?
If you've never had to do it, But, those days are gone. You technically, sometimes it converts back to text messaging. That's the fallback basic type of messaging. But the one that most people use is simple message service or small message.
Short
message. Yeah. Yeah. And that lets us do emojis and photos and bitmojis and all those cool things because we're using SMS. And then, of course, you have instant messaging applications, and those are, there's a long list of them. Facebook Messenger. We use Google Hangout Messenger, Slack. There's tons of them. Yeah. And I think the one that most people used first was AOL Instant Message. Of course, that's dormant. But all of those are different types of communication, but they all have the same issue, which is transmission, storage, access by others. And then, of course, because you have those 3 issues, you need to have a business associate agreement with whomever you are using. Whatever service you're using needs to have a BAA if you're going to discuss patient information without a patient authorization to do so.
Mm-hmm. And none of the services we mentioned are going to do that.
I know. Yeah, they're not going to do a BAA. I did have somebody ask, can I just put in my forms that you have the patient sign that says they authorize us to talk on those? Basically, you're saying you give up your HIPAA rights if you see us. So no, you can't do that. And there are a lot of alternatives, which takes us to that next step where it's an app. Mm-hmm. Okay. Text messaging is an app. SMS messaging is an app. Those are built-in apps. People don't see, well, then I have to use an app.
Yeah.
You're already using an app. You're just using a different one. Well, everybody doesn't use the same app. That would be the point of you not communicating with every single person. You shouldn't be just talking to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And if you send a message about a patient to, wrong person, wrong number, what are you going to do then? So you want them to log in and authenticate and be sure that it's them before you are messaging with them. So anybody that you think you may message with on a regular basis, you say, can you call me? I know it's out there. I put it out there. It's archaic method of communication.
Yeah, who uses telephones anymore?
Who actually makes a phone call?
I know. I wish they would just change the name of. They shouldn't even call them smartphones anymore. They're just not.
I tell people they're computers that make phone calls.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that's it. That's the way you should look at it. That's what you should think about it as. So yes, using another app. And, all the kids use whatever app their friends use. Hello, it'll work at work too. So, and we're not talking WhatsApp or Signal or any of those that tell you they're encrypted. Still doesn't solve the problem. Mm-hmm. You have to do the BAA. You have to make sure it's secured. You have to go through the BA due diligence and all of that kind of stuff. And yes, they do cost money.
Yep.
Oh, you mean I can't use a free app? You get what you pay for. You want security? How do you think those people make money? If it's free, they're making money somehow. And people don't get that. They're making money by collecting your activity and selling it. Mm-hmm. It's happening somewhere. They're doing advertising, and the advertising is targeted based on your activity. It's going to happen. And to just assume that you can do that, no. I mean, there are alternatives, and it requires people getting together and all their friends using the same app.
Yeah, but there are some good ones out there.
Oh, there's some great options. Mm-hmm. Some of them are really expensive. Others, not so much.
Yep.
And what you have to understand is, of course, you have to do your BA due diligence. And we've talked about that many times. Do not just assume. Mm-hmm. Anytime somebody says, I have a HIPAA compliant app, ? Right away.
Yeah.
If they say we have an app designed for healthcare, we sign a BAA and we take HIPAA seriously, I would be like, I'm interested. Mm-hmm. If they say I have a HIPAA compliant app, I'm going to need to know that first before I can talk to you anymore. Yeah. Let's talk about why you say that. But you have to understand how it's hosted. And you also want to make sure that whatever you get, it works in multiple places. It's not just an iOS app or an Android app or any of those things. And even if it works on all the mobile devices you use, you want to make sure that there's a desktop option so that people at your office can communicate with you from the computers without having to use a mobile device. Mm-hmm. And then comes the question of who gets to use it, who's allowed on here, and do I have to pay for everybody? And will you pay for whoever you want to have communications with you? It's who do you want to be allowed to use it? Think of it like your email. And I love it that a lot of people think, well, email's free. They don't even realize they're paying for it. It's like, you're paying for email. You don't get that? You're paying for email. Email's not free. For a business email, you can get free Gmail, but guess what? Ads.
Yeah.
So have you implemented any of the different ones?
I tried one a while back. It wasn't any of the bigger players in the game. Mm-hmm. And the healthcare provider ultimately decided that it was too much trouble.
Yeah. Security's not convenient.
Yeah. I don't know that they stopped the practice of texting or not because they weren't a client of mine, a monthly client. But they did, some of the arguments you were talking about, that's what they were complaining about, that they had to have a special app. They had to log into that app, when they wanted to use it because it had a security code on there in addition to the security on the phone because you didn't want somebody to pick up your phone to be able to get into that secure messaging app. Mm-hmm. So all the things that were in place to make it secure and compliant, they didn't like.
Security's not convenient.
So, but, the other option is stop using text messaging they were sending pictures of patients and,
good Lord.
Information. Everything you could imagine because that was the easiest way for them to communicate from the office back to the doctor was using text messaging, which is fine, but they just didn't want to do it through the app because it wasn't convenient.
I know. I love this. I can't do it any other way. Believe it or not, before you could do this, we managed to do it. We did. We managed to do it another way. I have some groups where, especially in the smaller area, more rural areas, and you only have, one large health system, and then you've got the practices that are independent practices that tie to that health system, into hospitals and other areas, other facilities that are part of it. And if the hospital adopts a messaging system, which if they haven't, they are going to, because they have the same problem. And if they aren't planning on doing it, you got to go look. Your security people need to be looking, because if you don't have one and you're not talking about one, they're using their phones. I can guarantee it.
Yeah.
It's happening. So just like the other, the IT guy, you can't do it. It's not going to work. You need to give up on that solution. Just stop. They're going to do it. They tell you they need it. They're going to do it. They have the ability to do it. And the only thing that stops them is just say no. It ain't happening.
Yeah, that doesn't work.
It doesn't. Not when it gets down to convenience and efficiency and caring for the patients. And I just need this one answer.
Well, there used to be more of the doctors needing to speak with the staff over text messaging, and that's still a big thing. But now we're actually starting to see where they're bringing the patients into the text messaging part of it. I think it was in the news one night, and they were showing this new application that hospitals are using where they can, like let's say you got somebody who's in surgery, they can communicate with the family members and give them updates about what's going on. They can send them pictures. Maybe somebody's had a baby and they couldn't come to the hospital because they're somewhere else. Or maybe in this case, what they were showing was that people that got trapped in some of these hurricane zones where people couldn't get to them, like, down in Florida and all that, they were able to communicate outside of the hospital and show, like, here's the newborn baby we had, and, too bad you couldn't get here. The roads are blocked.
Yeah.
Or you don't have to sit out in the lobby area all day long waiting for the doctor to possibly come by and give you information, because they'll text you and say, the doctor's going to be out in 10 minutes to speak with you, and you know that you need to get back to the waiting area. And they give you updates all along the way. So there's just a lot of interaction now with patients and patient families, which is great.
Well, and there are very positive things for this. It's just got to be done right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the big issue. If you're not going to do it right, then you're opening up a major hole for security and privacy issues. And so patient portals are great for communications. They're starting to add things into there to allow those chats like you and I talk about, the bots and the chats and all of that
Mm-hmm.
Slack has. And there is I Am Your Doctor, but it's an app. There's several of those popping up.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's the thing where you are just going to text message them, and they're like, well, the patient texted me. Okay. Still, here's the problem. I know you started it. Don't touch me. but it's like everything else we say. The patient can send it to you unsecured all they want. But once you have it, it's your responsibility to secure it and treat it appropriately and respond appropriately to the patient. So if you have authorizations with the patients that say, I understand that if I send a text message to my physician, it's unsecured and their response will be unsecured, great. But if you don't, I'm telling you, people are starting to catch on to this stuff, and it'll come back to haunt you. That they can set you up to answer them in an unsecured manner, get you to say stuff, and then use it against you.
Mm-hmm.
Guaranteed. Because people are really starting to get this. And we get calls about these kinds of problems now more often than you would think from people saying, about HIPAA, will you advise me on how to file a complaint? Is this right or wrong? Can they really do this? All of those kind of things. It's, divorce cases, child custody cases, lawsuits. It doesn't matter. There's a lot of reasons that you don't even realize are happening out there that people will, they're going to use the system.
Mm-hmm.
and create problems. And you never know that it's not just somebody that's decided they don't like you. It's like those Yelp reviews where they sign up for 6 or 7 different usernames and then do the reviews saying you're horrible.
Yep.
You know, that I've seen a comedy episode about a dentist who was going crazy because he got one really bad Yelp review and kept trying to kiss up to the person. The person didn't really care. They were going to do a bad review. They didn't care. They thought it was fun to do that. People are crazy. So you can check with your local health system to see if they have something where you could tie into it and be able to communicate with them and the doctors as part of the network. That works great in some areas. You can work with other practices that you consult with and refer with. You can have your own for your internal communications, and you don't communicate with patients. You can have one for patients, but you need to evaluate the situation and decide how you're going to deal with it. Now, if your decision is like David kind of implied of, it's not convenient, so we're going to keep doing it the wrong way, document that because somebody's going to get thrown under the bus.
This is true.
Yeah. I mean, I was in on a meeting recently where I knew that this person had done something and they didn't say a word. And then when it became clear that it was a really big mess, suddenly they had never heard of this before. It was not them. It was somebody else. It was the other person in the meeting. So, it's an unfortunate thing because doing the right thing is kind of what we hope for.
Yeah.
I always hope David will do the right thing, and then he does stuff like he did to me this morning. Maybe he'll quit. No, I know who I'm dealing with. He ain't going to quit.
Well, there's the right thing, and then there's the fun thing.
Yeah, there's the thing your parents want you to do, and then there's the thing you want to do. I remember those days. But that was when I was a teenager, David. I'm just saying.
All right. Well, I know in order to get your attention, it has to be kind of out there.
It really has to annoy me because I'm focused. All right, Guy. I don't know if we need to add more here, but feel free to. I think I'm all done with this.
Yeah. I mean, the only other thing that I would say is, do you want to mention any of the potential applications out there or just let people kind of do their own investigation on it?
Well, there's so many. I started to kind of pull a few of the different vendors in when I decided to talk about text messaging, and then I kind of threw that idea out with the opioid crisis thing. But, the big name that has been there the longest is Tiger Text. And They've done a great job of marketing. They've been around a long time. But every day there's going to be a new one that pops up. And eventually somebody will take over that crown, you have to assume. But I know that when you look at what the health systems use, it's a wide variety of different apps.
Yeah.
So they have platforms for it. I know Dr. First has a big one. There's, Epic and all of those guys. They have their own internal stuff. But if you want to have these communications and you want to be out, most people want to be able to communicate with other providers in the area. So it's important to see what other people are using. Yeah,
because that makes it a lot easier to adopt. Because if I'm going to 4 or 5 different healthcare providers and they all have this different app,
right,
I'm just gonna be like, I'm not gonna do that. That's crazy. I'm not gonna have 4 or 5 different apps on my phone for that. But yeah, if everybody's using the same one, or maybe 1 or 2, that's having the adoption of your patients into that technology is gonna be a lot easier.
Yeah, what David said.
It's always what I said.
Oh, no, it is not.
All right. So I'm cutting you off.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's our show for today, folks. I hope you enjoyed it. Remember, head over to helpmewithhipaa.com/give if you want to help keep the lights on so we can buy Donna some coffee or something. I don't know. Also, remember to share it out on social media, rate us on our podcasting apps, and don't forget to download apps in the App Store and the Play Store. So for Donna and myself, remember, HIPAA is not about compliance. It's about patient care.
You've been listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, hosted by Donna Grindle and David Sims. The show created to help you with HIPAA. For more information or to ask us a question, visit our website at helpmewithhipaa.com. Neither Donna Grindle or David Sims are attorneys, and they do not offer binding legal advice concerning regulatory compliance. The information in this podcast should not be relied upon or construed as legal advice in any way. Consult your attorney for legal advice concerning compliance with HIPAA regulations.